VGC is supported by Patreon. Check out patreon.com/videogameschronicle for more podcasts, ad-free browsing, and extra content. Thank you for your support. Andy, people may notice this week that there will be no formal, official Nintendo Switch 2 review. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? What's happening?
Yeah,
What's
so
the situation?
that's official now. I mean, obviously, bar us being blindsided by some special exclusive influencer
That's the postman
reviews, which would make Nintendo look very silly, to be honest, because they've kind of put out a statement and everything that's embargoed for today. It's not really surprising if you've seen, kind of the press reports that have been doing the rounds. So from my understanding, it's at least the first time in probably well over 20 years, maybe ever, that there's been no pre-release reviews for a Nintendo console. I mean, certainly as long as Chris and I have been working, I mean, I started into the GameCube gen, working professionally in the games media. We definitely had DS's. We definitely, they had us at the Wii Flat, which they had a flat in London where you went, and I remember playing Zelda Twilight Princess for like 3 days, reviewing that there. 3DS, Wii U. I'd probably say any platform holder, actually. Yeah. I can't. I mean, certainly Xbox Series X was out with good time. PS5 was a little bit less, but we still had it pre-release. Same with PS4. Same with Xbox One. Yeah, it's the first time in at least 20 years, probably ever, that there's no pre-release reviews for a Nintendo console. According to a company spokesperson who spoke to me, Nintendo decided not to send Switch 2 review units to the press ahead of launch because important features and updates will only be available via a system update on the day of the console's release, which of course is June the 5th this week. It did not. Sorry, that's the
Nintendo ninjas coming to get you.
That's my alarm telling me to check in for our flight.
Oh.
Which is the wrong day.
Yeah.
So that was a useful interruption. So they didn't say what these updates entail, or indeed explain why we couldn't just go and review the games at an in-person event, if that was the case, like we did, as I mentioned there with Wii. Yeah. Neither did it kind of explain why the press can't be trusted to cover, products that are unfinished with more updates coming, which kind of we've been doing for the last 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. That's completely normal. Of course, how and when any game publisher decides to distribute their review products is, totally their prerogative. The media has no rights to early samples. And of course, over the last decade, we've seen game coverage change drastically in terms of like shifting to more to post-release. Reviews used to be the final word on a game, and that's absolutely not the case now. So, it's a different world. I acknowledge that. However, a lack of coverage is bad for our readers, I would say, and I think few would disagree. When the console arrives this week, there's going to be again, bar some. We don't know what every single outlet's been told. I've spoke to journalists at the biggest publications, and they're seemingly in the same boat as us. And to the point where Nintendo's put a statement out. I mean, if there's a review on the New York Times tomorrow, and they've told everyone else that they can't do reviews because of a day one update, then, someone's going to look silly, or both of us. But obviously, to my knowledge, there'll be no reviews of games. There's going to be no analysis of hardware performance or battery life. There's going to be no testing of the key features like game chat or backwards compatibility. You're not going to see any hidden gems unearthed or, potential dodgy ports highlighted before anyone spends their money. And when the reviews eventually do arrive, a lot of critics are going to have been incentivized to kind of rush through the games as quickly as possible, because that's what Google and social media demands these days. I don't think it's going to matter for Nintendo. Of course, it's not. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made this decision. It's going to be, everyone's. I think between us, we've got about 6 Switches coming, right? This console's going to sell gangbusters. You know, to people predominantly who are not as concerned about the critical consensus as they might have been in the years past, right? They don't really, care what the press say about this thing at launch. They're buying it anyway, and I'm one of those people as well. Even if they said it was awful, I'm going to buy it. And of course, we'll continue to cover Switch 2 as after the console comes out, when we get our units. For us, of course, like in the media, it's disappointing. We've been saying all year it's a really tough time for independent publications. And we've been calling for all of our readers to kind of support us on Patreon. The big hope this year for everyone working in the media was GTA 6 and pre-launch Switch 2 review coverage, and that's now off the table. So, the year just got a little bit tougher for everyone. And also it means that, as we've kind of discussing at the top of this, we're going to be doing our Switch 2 review coverage whilst going to Summer Game Fest. Probably the biggest games event of the year in terms of the effort we have to put into covering everything. And Nintendo would have been well aware of that. But I'd say probably, aside from obviously consumers, more so the media, the people who miss out the most are all of the third-party developers who've got games on Switch 2.
100%.
Which is just, it's really kind of strange to me with how they've been promoting third-party games with Switch 2, that big reveal, look how many games we've got, and a lot of the kind of talk you're hearing from companies like Take-Two is that Nintendo's really been trying to engage us to support them and be involved, and then now they don't have any reviews. Many publishers have kind of reached out to us and other publications, asking like, hey guys, like, when can we send you review code? When can we do reviews? They've been seemingly as in the dark as we have from our conversations. And some have even kind of suggested that, hey, maybe we shouldn't have been at launch. Maybe we should have gone a bit further back because they're now kind of launching with no editorial coverage at all.
Yeah.
There's a chance that this probably was a technical nightmare for Nintendo. We're seeing people who the inevitable pre-launch, kind of Russian street date dodgers who are putting the now world exclusive videos up. You're seeing that they're kind of unable to play any games seemingly because of it requiring a system update. I'd also think it's fair to stress that there's no precedent at all for Nintendo being, not at all, but there's not really any precedent for Nintendo being adversarial with press, certainly in terms of reviews. In my experience, and I'm sure Chris would agree, I actually think they're one of the most critic-friendly companies. They often supply review code months, many weeks in advance.
Yeah, definitely.
They've certainly been very supportive of VGC on that front from day one. And I personally don't believe that it's anything to do with confidence in Switch 2 either, because as I'll get to soon, I was at Nintendo about a week ago. I spent a day with their big launch teams, Mario Kart World and Switch 2 Welcome Tour, and they're brilliant. They're really good. I can't wait to play more of them. So in my opinion, I think this decision is likely just as motivated by, Nintendo's paranoia around leaks as it is with any kind of missing functionality. Those leaked videos of the consoles not being able to do anything kind of strengthens that, I guess. Consoles have had required day one patches for over a decade. It's not new. I don't believe that Nintendo couldn't have found a way for reviewers to experience the missing features, without this patch.
Yeah.
I think in the end it is kind of a bad look for Nintendo at a time when a lot of their decisions are being received negatively with fans. I mean, obviously you've seen that they've kind of pioneered the $80 price point for games with Switch 2, which you're now seeing kind of Xbox and other companies follow suit. There's the kind of prevalence of game key cards, which is annoying a lot of people, especially preservationists. These seemingly the few options they've given third-party developers in terms of size of the game card. So they're just basically, glamorized download codes on a bit of plastic.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got the company kind of regularly declining to disclose who's actually making its games these days. We still have no idea who's making Donkey Kong, for example. I mean, I've been on this rant before. I think history tells us that a lack of transparency with the press isn't good for consumers. You know, the big example being Cyberpunk 2077's, you know, shocking console launch, which was a direct result of them withdrawing review code in this style, you know, and it was a nasty surprise for many players on day one, you know, finding that out what the state that version was in. You know, on the flip side, you know, many companies, I say some companies in the past, notably Bethesda, have kind of briefly implemented a no pre-release reviews policy. And then you kind of saw the flip side where really great games like Doom, Prey, Dishonored 2 missed out on a tremendous amount of positive coverage at launch. And they're kind of this, if you kind of dig down in the sales curves, it did suggest that a lot of players did want to hear from reviews before they spent money on you know, kind of like non-known quantities. So obviously Nintendo's made its decision. On VGC, we'll be covering Switch 2 and its launch games comprehensively, you know, as quickly as we're able to. Obviously, sadly, Summer Game Fest means that our coverage is probably going to take a little bit longer than we would have liked. And then I just finished by saying, if anyone listening has got any suggestions about, you know, how they'd like to see us, you know, cover Switch 2 in the coming weeks, we'd love to hear it. I guess it's an opportunity to do something unique, maybe. So let us know in the Discord, let us know on the website comments.
Yeah. I think we just do Mario Kart tournaments for money, and that's it. Nothing else. Just betting on Mario Kart. Before we carry on, Chris, any thoughts as a former Nintendo bod while the guy through Resident Evil 4 breaks into your house?
I was literally about to say that. I apologise profusely. There's a gardener outside in the next door neighbour who's going wild just now.
It's not Nintendo, is it?
I thought it was a Resi guy
Shigsy
going to break through the window. It was Shigsy himself with a chainsaw going to kick the window in. Yeah, it's really frustrating because like I've worked obviously in official Nintendo magazine in the past, and like Andy says, we had a lot of access to the consoles and handhelds pre-launch, so we could prepare our coverage really well, and it gives you time to kind of to digest as well. Like the longer you have with these things before release, the longer you get to sit and think about it and say, do you know something, I don't like this, or do you know, people aren't talking enough about this bit. This bit's really cool. What I'm worried we're going to get is a race to the bottom where as soon as things come out, everyone goes, right, quick, hammer this and get the coverage up. And invariably that might mean that the first coverage you'll see, whether that's from press or quite possibly from influencers, because everyone's receiving things at the same time, is going to be the more extreme. This is the best thing you've ever seen in your life, or this is the worst thing that we've ever seen. And then over time, the more nuanced takes will eventually start to appear. So it's disappointing. It's a shame. I again, like Andy says, it's the third party devs I feel the most for, because there's games like Fast Fusion and Survival Kids, which quite possibly could be hidden gems on day one, and nobody's going to be talking about those because there'll be zero articles on any website saying, by the way, you want to check out Fast Fusion, or Survival Kids is the co-op kind of gem that everyone should be getting, especially if this game share feature works as well as it looks like it might. That's something we don't know until day one, so it's frustrating, but we're just going to have to make the best of it as we can when we finally get our hands on them, and like Andy says, kind of cover it in an interesting way.